I guess it's 10 o'clock. Hi, folks. All right, Duane is here. Hi, folks. Welcome. This is a live stream with Duane Ortega from BestTransactionFunding.com. And since this is our first live stream, I want to check if you can hear me. So if you can just type something in the chat. Okay. I don't see anybody. And then I know. Can you hear me? I guess nobody can hear me. Oh, I can see Duane. Duane can hear me. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. Oh, okay. We have Stan Peters. Hi, Stan. And Chris. Hi, Chris. And okay, that's it for now. I saw some other people waiting. If you are on Facebook and you typing something in the chat, there is a slight delay, about 10 seconds when you type something to show. And okay, so all right, Jackie. Hi, Jackie. Good. I can hear you. Okay, that's good. All right, we have 45 minutes from which, so there is not a lot of time because we have to let Duane go. He has a closing today. What we're planning to do is have about 15 minutes, just a presentation from Duane, and after that it will be Q&A. You can ask him questions in the chat. So with that out of the way, I want to introduce Duane Ortega. Let me add him to the stream. Hi, Duane.
Hi. Hi, Janet. Thank you for having me.
Duane, I cannot hear you.
You cannot hear me? Okay.
I don't know why.
I'm not on mute.
Okay.
Let me see. Hello? Testing.
There is, I can't hear you. I don't know why. Can you check your mic and see if your mic is on?
It is. I am testing it. It's on.
You can hear me, but I can't.
Yes.
Can you, Chris, or somebody, can you hear Duane?
Hello? Hello?
Can you type if you hear Duane?
Testing 1, 2, 3. Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, you can hear him, but I don't know why I can't. So that is very strange. Well, actually not strange at all. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Okay. Oh, that's much better.
You still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good.
All right. So this is, I want to introduce you to Duane Ortega. He's a transaction funding lender from BestTransactionFunding.com. He has been a real estate investor for the last 20 years. And since 2007, he started doing short sales. And with that, he got involved into transaction funding for himself and other investors. His company is one of the best in the business, so he's the right person to listen to. And I'm sorry about the, this is actually our first live stream, so it's a little bit stressful. But, the main thing is to get him to explain what transactional funding is, and also for you to be able to ask questions. So with that, Duane, take it away.
Thank you, Jenna, again for having me, and hope everyone can hear me. I will start out with an example on what transactional funding is and how it can be used for double closings. So let's get started. So Jenna, you will present my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
1 second. Yeah. So
let me know when you
have,
yeah,
you have to share it, I guess. So you have to share your screen. I already have my.
Okay, hold on for a second.
Yeah.
Oh shit, that's right. Okay, share screen.
Yes.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Can you see that, Jenna?
Oh, yes. Here you go. And
okay. All right. So we provide transactional funding nationwide where applicable. And our company is BestTransactionFunding.com. That's our website as well. And that's our information down there. But let's just get started with a transaction example so that it will be clear for everyone how this works. So what is transactional funding? It is funding for one day on back-to-back closings. Back-to-back closings that were executed in order for a real estate investor to earn their fee for their time and effort. So just like in any wholesale transactions, again, transactional funding is for wholesalers. You buy low, sell high, and you keep the difference. That's basically it in a nutshell as far as wholesale transactions. So how can transactional funding help this or facilitate this process? So let's go through an example. So let's say a few years ago, Mr. John purchases a house, 100% financing with an adjustable rate mortgage for $500,000. Over time, interest rates rise, and then the market crashes as far as the real estate market crashes. So last year, for example, let's say his house was worth only $400,000. Then let's say this year he loses his job because of the coronavirus. So this is a very bad year, as we all know. Then he needs to put his house for sale because he can't afford the mortgage. He can't afford the monthly payment. So, but he can't sell. He can't sell. Why? Because if he sells, he owes more than what the house is worth. Therefore, in order for him to sell, he has to pay out of his pocket $100,000 at closing in order to sell his house to break even. But it's not even breaking even because he's paying $100,000 out of his pocket. So what's he to do? He's behind on payments, facing foreclosure, and he needs help. So this is where wholesalers come in. So wholesalers typically, in this example, this is a HUD example. They farm HUD homes, REOs, probates, any distressed situation. So in this example, they farm HUD homes. Wholesaler, let's say, HUD takes John's house back, okay, because he can't pay. So they foreclosed on it. So the wholesaler, Mr. B, negotiates with the HUD. And then they come up to an agreement, that John or Mr. B is approved for $300,000 to buy the property. And then Mr. B, at the same time, finds a retail cash buyer, Mr. C, to buy the property for $375,000. Keep in mind that the market value of the house is still $400,000. So at closing, or he coordinates both closings to close at the same day. So on that same day, let's say a month later, the AB is closing for 300,000. Okay, this is what he negotiated with HUD. So where does that money come from? It comes from transactional funding, the 300,000. If the B investor does not have the money to purchase that property, that's where transactional funding comes in. Then the next hour, he sells it for 375,000. So he sells it from Mr. B to Mr. C. That's why it's called the BC closing for 375. And then who gets to keep the profit in between? So roughly 75K less closing costs and fees. Mr. B investor keeps 75,000. And then keep in mind also that the property is still worth 400,000, and Mr. C actually has equity in it for 25. So what does this result in? Everyone wins. The HUD wins by getting a bad asset off their books. Mr. B wins by keeping the majority of the profit. Mr. C wins by having equity in his home, instant equity in his home. And also, and that's it. And everyone wins. Let's see. So any questions so far? I mean, feel free to ask questions on the chat. I can't see it right now, but please put down your questions and queue them up, and then we'll discuss it later.
Yeah, if you have a question, I was thinking is maybe just finish with the presentation and they can ask questions at the end. Is that okay?
Sure. Okay. Yes, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the general funding process of the industry, of the transactional funding industry. So within 2 weeks of the closing, B contacts a transactional funder. B investor applies for transactional funding, and also B investor and closing agent submit the required paperwork to us. C buyer wires first, and then funder wires the money to the disbursing agent and the day of closing. And the next step is the B investor signs transactional funding paperwork. The A, B, and BC close in that order, because you can't close the BC first and it'll cloud the title. Closing agent disperses all escrowed funds for both transactions. Closing agent has to be the same agent for both transactions. So whether it's a title state or a title region or an attorney state or an attorney region, the closing agent has to be the same on both transactions, A, B, and BC. Okay, qualifications, basically nothing. No LTV, no credit check, no appraisal, no income verification, easy approval, fast setup, proof of funds letter provided, 100% financing, the least expensive way to double close. There's really no qualifications other than that there is a BC transaction at the end. Okay, so what's the catch? 1 day rate, typically 2 to 4%. Funding application to identify A, B, and C parties, property, and the closing agent. Processing fee of $5.95 to $7.95. Purchase and sale agreement between A to B. Short sale approval letter from A's lender if applicable. And sale agreement between B to C. Proof of funds from C cash buyer. Title company information. C's funds must be wired into closing agent versus bank or certified checks. Closing agent must provide proof of cleared and wired funds. So the conclusion is funding is based on the transaction, not the investor or the property. Allows back-to-back transactions to close without issues due to separate funds. So the B investor actually has their own funds via the transactional funder versus an assignment or saying that they will use the end buyer's funds to fund the first transaction, which went out the window about 10 years ago. It's simple, hassle-free, and this is our rate, BestTransactionFunding.com. We provide an easy, simple, and fast process. We've funded, our shortest turnaround time was we've funded within a day. But the B investor was an experienced investor, had his ducks in a row, the title company ready to go, and we closed within a day for, I believe it was about 150,000. Extremely low rate, 1.75% up to 1 million. So for higher end states or cities or towns, we can actually, if it costs $1 million, we can fund that for 1.75%. Same day transactional funding. I'm sorry, go ahead, Jenna.
Okay. That way, that would be a good spread for $1 million.
Yes. Yeah, it definitely, it's useful in California, and some parts of Florida.
Yes.
Same day transactional funding, proof of funds, VOD letters provided. I actually have an announcement that we provide unlimited VODs for $149 a month if you subscribe. Otherwise, it's $99 per VOD up to 500,000. I'll talk about that later.
I have
The
a
proof of
question. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I said no questions, but just to clarify, what is the difference between proof of funds and VOD?
It's really semantics. Some people call proof of funds verification of deposit and vice versa. So let me just tell you what we provide. Proof of funds that we provide is a letter that we say that we have the funds to close with this investor for this amount as of this date. Okay. And we also specify in our website that it is only for back-to-back transactions. It's not for rehabbing. It's not for buy, fix, and flip. It's for only buy and sell.
Okay.
So that's our proof of funds letter. Our VOD, verification of deposits, which sometimes get called proof of funds as well, is an actual transaction balance from the bank, not a bank statement from last month. It's actually, I go to the bank and we get this transactional balance for whatever is required. And it shows the available balance that we have. So if you combine the proof of funds with the VOD, then that would present a stronger offer than everybody else.
I see. Thank you.
Sure. HUDs, REOs, short sales, and any wholesale can be funded. Really are most, I guess, most of our transactions that we process these days or within the past 2 years have been HUDs, REOs, and also rehabbers who are trying to purchase property first, and then they get hard money later. So those are most of our transactions. Short sales have been few and far between, and probates also are few and far between. Probates are somewhat a little complicated because you have, if there are a lot of heirs. One time we closed a transaction that had 8 heirs, and they were all over the country, and one objected, so it was a mess. So that's one example of a transaction that we had.
No, why? As you're talking, questions come to me. But why would somebody use transaction funding? Why don't they just use hard money lender for the transaction? Why go through transaction funding and then to hard money? What would be the reason for that?
Okay, let's say it's a burnt out house. Okay, so let me give you a disclaimer first. I'm not a hard money lender, so I am not 100% sure their reasons. But let me tell you what happened in our transaction. So, for example, it's a burnt out house. The B investor would like to buy it and rehab it. No bank would touch that. No conventional lender would touch it. Some hard money lenders, which are becoming like banks as far as their requirements, they don't want to touch it either unless you own it already, right? They don't want to give money to an investor to purchase an unlivable house. So the B investor had to buy it first with transactional funding, and then state on the BC side, the hard money gave them money to rehab it. So they had to own it first, basically.
Okay, I see. Makes sense.
Okay. And we offer 100% financing. So that means at closing on the AB side, there's 0 out of pocket. So you don't even have to come up with a penny out of your pocket. However, we don't provide EMDs or deposits. That's the only thing that has to come out of your pocket if that is required. Okay, so there's a $4.95 processing fee in the BC close. That means you don't pay anything until it'll be netted out of the transaction at the end. So nothing upfront, no money upfront at all. There's a 10% referral program. So for example, if you refer us to somebody, let's say Mr. B, and Mr. B closes with us 10 times, we pay you a referral fee of 10% of what we get 10 times forever. And more on that later as well. It's actually on our FAQ page number 2. if you guys are interested.
Okay.
Nationwide funding, where applicable. Amounts greater than 1 million are evaluated on a case-by-case basis. So we fund above $1 million. However, anything above $1 million requires more scrutiny and more due diligence and more paperwork and talking and meeting, especially if you get to beyond 10 million. We have partners that we can go actually up to 100 million. So, but then again, you have to be an experienced investor when you get to those amounts and provide your portfolio, etc. And we would want a letter of intent and other paperwork. Okay, so amounts less than 115K, there's a flat fee of 2,000 applies plus processing fee. Free stuff. So we provide free blogs, free reports on our website, and free POFs. POFs are actually a good way to get your foot in the door, then back it up with a VOD if it's necessary, and then close. We have current webinars as we speak, VOD specials, and promotional items. So again, like I mentioned earlier, today is my first public announcement. Jana, thank you for being the avenue for me to announce this, that we are offering unlimited VODs at $149 per month. So let's say you're making multiple offers. Let's say you're making 10 offers on 10 different houses. You can produce our free proof of funds letters with our VODs as many times as you want in the next 30 days or whatever your monthly anniversary is. And we can provide you with unlimited VODs up to 500,000.
Correct. So proof of fund, of course, is free, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So this is only if it's a transaction that's the bank or the seller requests VOD. I'm assuming that's
Correct.
when you will use it. Yes.
Correct.
That sounds good. So.
Okay. Well, this is my contact information. I guess I'll just leave it up there, and then we can. Well, no, I have to unshare my screen, so you actually won't see anything. Questions and answers.
Yes, those are your kids.
Yes, they say thank you too.
Very good. So, okay, I'll go back to us.
Okay.
And guys, you can start asking questions. We're done with the presentation. If you have any questions, just type them in the chat. Again, if you're on Facebook, you probably, and I don't see anybody on Facebook, but you probably have a short delay. Okay, everybody, I guess, is typing furiously. So I have a question. You said that most of the transactions that you have right now are HUD, or was I mistaken? Like HUD 3.0?
Yes. Yeah. HUDs, REOs, and also rehabbers who are buying and rehabbing.
So no short sales now?
Very few and far between. Short sales is what we got started with 11 years ago.
Right.
And that petered out with some laws that were passed because of the real estate market crash. Yeah. And all the short sale banks actually required them, there was a resale restriction. So then, although it's not legal, and I can get into that if you want, to have a resale restriction after you own the house, everyone abided by it. So then that killed the short sale market.
Yeah. So does that mean that you cannot do short sales right now? You mentioned that you can. Right?
Oh, well, after that debacle about 7-8 years ago, there were banks that realized, hey, we need to be able to move these properties, right? So some of them who actually previously had a resale restriction, some of them would not have resale restrictions. So I've seen, let's say, for example, Countrywide or Bank of America. I've seen short sale approval letters that, from the same company saying that, hey, there is a resale restriction of 90 days. But the next month I see another short sale approval from another client saying there is no resale restriction, meaning there's no mention of it.
So it'd be case by case on the short
Yes.
sale.
So yeah, the short sales that we receive, I think everyone knows now that if there's a resale restriction, you can't use transactional funding. But if there isn't, then you can. However, I must say, if someone is courageous enough to take on the big banks, legally, how can one entity restrict you from selling your own house after you buy it?
That's a good question.
No one has ever challenged them. And I think if I was an hypothetical crusader and attorney, I think I would take this all the way to the Supreme Court.
Well, this is the same as the builders. Some builders have a restriction on new homes. You can't buy it if you're an investor. And real estate agents always say, like, you have to have intentions of not reselling, and the key being intentions of not reselling it. So I guess there's always a gray area there. So Jackie has a question. What happens if the end buyer backs out at the last moment? What's keeping them in the deal?
Okay. What's keeping the C buyer in the deal would be the earnest money deposit, first and foremost. If it's significant enough, let's say 20%, I don't think anybody will back out. Now, that's just scratching the surface as far as what's keeping them in the deal. What's going to keep us in the deal if they back out? Nothing, because we would require the end buyer, Mr. C, to wire their funds into the closing agent first. And we would require proof from the closing agent that they received that money, then we wire our funds. So if C buyer backs out, he wouldn't wire that money. So we wouldn't wire ours as well.
Yes.
Did I answer your question,
yes.
Jackie?
I guess, Jackie, did that answer the question, Jackie? Yeah, I'm assuming that would be yes. There's a slight delay. I don't know why. I guess that's okay. I'm assuming that's it. What is the, since I'm waiting for other questions, what is the average earnest money deposit that you see in the transactions?
I would say anywhere from 1,000 to 5,000 on average.
On average, on the BC transaction, on the BC.
I would say about 5 to 10%.
Okay.
We don't really look at that, but we do see it in passing.
Right. Because you see the HUD, yes.
On the AB side, though, I've seen no EMD deposits. Right? It depends on how strong your contract is, your negotiating skills, how experienced you are as a wholesaler.
I was thinking to ask you that. That's you answered before I asked. Okay, see, I have another. Stan asked, can my end buyer have 2 or 3K FHA financing?
Yeah, theoretically, anybody can have any financing at the end, or the end buyer, the C end buyer. So they can have 2 or 3K, conventional, hard money, cash. However, conventional 2 or 3K or any type of traditional financing, we don't see that much, because they usually require either seasoning, or if they don't require seasoning, let's say 60 days seasoning. Seasoning, by the way, is, if anyone, just to review what it is, it's you have to own the property for a certain number of days. So some lenders I've seen require 60-day or 90-day seasoning. So because of that, then we can't really do the transactional funding, which is only same day. Now, some lenders who don't have seasoning require the deed to be recorded and sent to them as proof that it's been recorded. Okay, we have no objections on that if it can be done on the same day, right? But however, let me get back to the same day, quote unquote, same day. If it can be done on the same day, we have no objections on sending them the recording or anything like that. We just need our funds to be done on returned on the same day. However, some of them would want, the physical paper, but some of these guys are now electronic, so it kind of creates some kind of issues or going back and forth. We have closed conventionally previously, or with the 203K FHA financing, or with FHA financing, but it was rare. It doesn't happen often. But the key is the title company. And we have title companies that we've worked with nationwide. So just ask us, should you have any issues? I'm digressing, but really the key is the title company. An experienced title company, right, makes the biggest difference. It can make or break the deal. So let me get back to financing. So some require seasoning, some don't. Those that don't, they may require other restrictions that we can't abide by, or maybe the title company can resolve. Our most common BC lenders or C lenders are hard money, or they have their own cash.
Yeah, that would be ideal, having cash. The BC buyer to have cash, I guess.
Yeah, usually if they have cash, they're usually experienced rehabbers.
Oh, well, Chris, I guess he asked about title seasoning. So that's can the end buyer finance with a conventional loan? You talked about title seasoning, but what about conventional loan?
Oh, same thing as 203K FHA. It's either traditional, conventional, 203K FHA, any of those big institution lending, we can fund. I mean, we have no objections that the C buyer has those funding capabilities, but usually they either have title seasoning restrictions, which we can't do if you have to own it for 60 days, or they have other restrictions, such as they need to see the physical deed, and it'll take 7 days to close on the BC side. We can't do that either. Going back to the same day, I'm digressing again. Same day is for most of the country except for a few states. For example, California, their same day is actually 2 to 3 days because of the way they do things, especially Southern California. Okay, so
what about Florida, since we
Florida is actually the same day from all our experience with Florida. It's same day back to back. And I have lots of closing agents there actually that we can recommend.
Good. And okay, so Sorten, hi Sorten. I have a house under contract under my LLC name. When I find the buyer for the house, what name do I put under seller if I don't own the property yet?
Okay, so let's say your LLC name is Sortan LLC. When I find a buyer for the house, what name do I put the seller under the seller if I don't own the property yet? Okay, so you would put Sortan LLC as the seller, and then you would explain that by the time that I convey this to you, or the title company or the closing agent conveys this property to the C buyer, you would have been the proper and rightful owner.
I see. Well, a lot of agents write owner of record. Would that work or no?
Yeah, I think that would work, because what happens is that the title agent or closing agent would first close the AB transaction first. They have to. They cannot close the BC transaction, then the AB, or use the BC transaction's money to fund the AB. I can get into that if you want. But so the key is separate funding. So we provide separate funding for the AB close. Let's say in my example, it was 300,000, and then they close that, and in the electronic counties, they actually close and record the AB, then close and record the BC. If it's manual still, if you still had to hand deliver everything, you sign everything in the office, and if you want, depending on the closing agent, again, closing agent is key. They would have the AB signed first, then the BC, so that at least they have it on record that it was in that order, executed in that order. Then they would go down to the county recorder and record everything properly. and then they would disperse the funds.
Mm-hmm.
Did I answer your question, Sortan? Just let me know.
Okay, that probably be yes. Did we answer this? Would a seller accept transactional funding proof of fund letter? Proof of funds letter. What's your experience with that? Okay.
Yes. Okay. Proof of funds letters are abused. That's plain and simple fact. They're abused by everybody because they're free. However, if you use them properly, right, the seller should have no issues with that. However, there's a lot of people there that don't know what they're doing. They just kick their tires around, and they don't go through with anything. The B investor themselves, they don't follow up. They don't call back. So it gives themselves a bad name and gives us a bad name. But yes, they do work if you use them properly, right? As long as you have an end buyer, meaning a buyer's list, right? That where, let's say you're farming for 3-bedroom, two bath house, and you have 3-2 buyers as well. So as long as you have a ready buyer's list and you're making an offer and you know that this property would go to a C buyer investor ready to go, and you actually intend to close on it with transactional funding, it does work as long as it's done properly and responsibly.
So for new wholesalers, the real estate investors find the buyer first. Is that correct?
Well, I would. Some people do that, and that I've seen. The only thing we can talk about, or I can talk about, is what we experience from other investors, B investors. Some of them have found they found the investors first, and they work backwards, right? And others already have a ready list, and or have already a ready list of C buyers that they know they can market this property to. So I would say, in that regard, I would say get yourself educated as much as you can in the wholesaling business. Join your local RIA. Maybe be an understudy to an experienced wholesaler, and do it right. So for your reputation's sake, and your reputation is gold. So just hopefully everyone does it right.
Yes. Oh, okay. Okay, we have a little bit of a slight delay, but can you go over the usual closing costs for this transaction?
I'm not a closing agent, but I know that they have standard fees. It's all percentage wise. So I would say our typical transaction, maybe it's 150 to 200,000. Closing costs, probably around the 3,000 to 5,000, depending on what's going on. Again, I'm not the expert on that, but you can speak with a closing agent to find out more information, and I can give you, or just email info@besttransactionfunding.com, and then we can give you a list of companies that we've closed with previously in Florida or wherever you are, and then you can ask them those questions.
Yeah, I guess that says, Jackie says, very clear explanation. Sortan says, thanks. And let me look at the time. We still have time, about 5 minutes, for a couple more questions. And unfortunately, we have to let, why are hot, okay. 1 second, Chris. Why hot properties easier to flip than, say, short sales?
First and foremost, with short sales, they had resale restrictions. Now, we don't do many short sales, but what I've seen is there are no more resale restrictions for short sales. But originally, HUD properties were better because they don't care if you resell them or not. You just can't assign HUD properties or REO properties or short sale properties. You can't assign them. So you have to buy them first in your company's name and then sell them. So that's the easy answer. And also what we found is HUD is generally easier to deal with. You negotiate it. I mean, again, this is in a nutshell. This is a summary. You negotiate it. You negotiate a price. They don't care what happens to it afterwards. You shake hands, and then close. The only thing is sometimes they want their own closing agent to transact the AB. So one way around that is say, hey, AB closing agent, we're doing a back-to-back transaction. Do you know how to do that? If they don't know how to do that, that would be the simplest way for them to agree. And then we can guide them through that. Even though they don't have experience, even if the closing agent doesn't have experience, we can guide them through that to close the back-to-back transaction. It just makes it a little harder. However, if they're responsible and they get back to us with what we need, then everything would be good. However, some closing agents are not experienced and they're not cooperative. So then what we can do is tell the closing agent, hey, we'll pay for all your fees and we'll just close it in my closing agent's office for both transactions. If they don't want to do that, then the other scenario is, okay, you close with your AB closing agent, but B will close in his title agent's office, and BC will also close in that same title agent's office. That is a B advocate. I'm sorry, did I answer your question?
Chris? And we have a bit of a delay. I'm just curious, I wanted to ask a question. Do you see many transactions from Hubzu.com, auction.com? Do investors use those to flip and do short sale? Is that?
Can you? There were a lot of interest in auctions. However,
not court auctions, but not court auctions. I understand that you have to have cash, and it's a little bit more complicated. Right. But the Hubzu.com, and which they are REOs basically, right? So I know they ask for a larger deposit. So I guess if you have that, would that be a possibility?
They require deposit from the B investor, correct?
From the B, yeah.
Again, we can fund we fund many REOs in the past.
Right.
So as long as you can do a back-to-back transaction with it and they have a ready seed buyer, I don't see an issue of why we wouldn't fund that transaction.
Yeah. Closing company, maybe.
Closing agent is 80% of the battle.
Okay, so that's good to know. And if one more question from Sortan, if the transaction does not close, do I get the processing fee back?
Good question. We don't charge anything up front. So if the transaction does not close, you don't lose anything.
So everything's paid at closing. So if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Okay.
Correct.
Well, other than you lose your time, but
exactly.
So, well, thank you all for participating. It's 10:45, and I wanted to thank Duane for meeting us and answering questions. And I know today you're very busy, and my mistake that I should have arranged it for a different time, but next time. So thank you so much for being with us, and thank you everybody who was here. After the live broadcast, I'm going to include all Duane's information, website, and everything he's willing to share in the comments below. Thank you.
May I just say,
Sure.
Jana, thank you very much for having me, and thanks for all the great questions and tuning in. I just want to stress that we provide free blogs, free POFs, VODs as you need them. We provide 10% referral fee. We're 11 years in this business, strictly transactional funding. That's why we're the best, number one in Google search when you type in transactional funding. Again, our website is BestTransactionFunding.com. Also, our motto is to provide the best customer service in the world. So we do that, and we strive to do that. We get back to everybody. We email everybody back. We call everybody back. We can't tell you how many people have come to us saying that no one is replying to me. They're putting my deal in jeopardy. Thank God you guys have called me back, and thank you for calling me back very quickly or contacting me back. So that is our mission, to provide the best customer service in the world. Please give us a try when you have a transaction for back-to-back closing. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Duane. And thanks everybody for participating. If you're interested in more chats like this one, next one will be a little bit smoother, I guess. With the technology, I think we got it figured out. So thanks, Duane, and maybe we'll see you again. And I will share this video with you if you want to include it in your website.
Thank you very much, Anna. Take care. Have a good day.
Have a good day too.